Okay, welcome to my end of season report on the 1985 Stratomatic New York Yankees. I thought it was only right to start the video off with a little disclaimer because some of the images you're going to see in the form of stats, specifically pitching stats, are not pretty. They are not going to be easy on the eyes, but the stats are what they are. They have to be viewed, they need to be ingested, and they need to be taken for what they are. So we'll get started with the pitching stats first. And again, all these stats are final. What I want everyone to do at the start here is on line two, where Ron Guidry is. Um, I'm going to talk about Ron Guidry after I do the hitting because it's after I go through the hitting, which is when I'm going to wrap everything up, put it into a bow, and finish everything up. What I want everyone to do in the beginning is focus in on lines three and four, where we have Phil Negro and Ed Whitson. And here's a couple numbers to keep in mind as you look at their end of year stats. Phil Negro and Ed Whitson combined for 63 starts in my season with the 1985 New York Yankees, and they only totaled a combined 23 quality starts. Their one loss record combined was 25 and 27, and I actually consider that pretty good considering I only got a combined 23 quality starts out of the two. But keep in mind, those are my number two and number three pitchers in the rotation according to number of starts on the season. And again, I pretty much followed the pitching rotation all throughout the season. I'll let you know where I kind of varied a little bit in September. Here are the whips for Phil Necro and Ed Whitson. Right. So I would say that that is the bad news when it comes to the starting pitching. Some good news with the starting pitching. And I did many shorts on Joe Cowley, his progress during the season. And if you remember in my midseason report, I said, I don't know if Joe Cowley can continue pitching at the pace that he was pitching at. You can see Joe Cowley finished off with a great year. He finished off 13 and 5, ERA under 3, and he actually led the 85 Yankees in quality starts. So just an absolute incredible job done by Joe Cowley. Marty Bystrom is on line 13. Now, the reason why Marty Bystrom finished the year with 10 starts and not just 8 like he had for the 1985 Yanks was because in September of 85, the Yankees brought Phil Negro in. Okay, and I think he had like 3 starts with the 85 Yanks or something like that. And the only reason why I didn't put Phil Necro's Houston Astro card on the 1985 Yankees was because Joe Necro actually had a pretty decent year or a pretty decent card for the 1985 Astros. And if he had a card for the way he pitched with the 1985 Yanks, his card would not have nearly been that good. So what I decided to do to keep things as realistic as possible, I just gave Marty Bystrom a couple extra starts. I mean, in the end, it wouldn't have mattered anyway because I was out of it anyway. So, but you can see Marty Bystrom's final numbers are not pretty as to be expected, and he finishes with uh, a whip that I didn't even know was possible to get that high, 1.71 on the season. As expected, my bullpen performed at a very high level. We could look at Dave Righetti and Brian Fisher on lines 8 and 9. What I would say about Brian Fisher is this. I think Brian Fisher pretty much performed uh, pretty much right to where I thought he would be, like just looking at his card, right? I think Dave Righetti performed slightly above what his card says because as good as Dave Righetti's 1985 card is, it's very hard to expect anyone, whether it be a starter or reliever, to pitch to an ERA of under 2. And you could see Dave Righetti had a little under 100 innings pitched. Because we all know playing Stratomatic, I don't care how good your closer is, what kind of a lockdown card he may have. There's always going to be a game here or there where you bring in your closer and you're rolling hitter cards for like 4 or 5 hitters. And next thing you know, your ace closer has given up 3 runs without giving up or getting an out. But that really didn't happen to Dave Righetti in my 1985 season. He finished the year with 38 saves. I don't keep track of blown saves, even though I think I should have. But I would say Righetti probably blew anywhere from 4 no more than six blown saves on the season for Dave Righetti. He was absolutely lights out for me. You could also see Brian Fisher chipped in with seven saves as well. And I got pretty much everything that I expected out of Bob Shirley and Rich Bordy as well. You can see Rich Bordy chipped in with two quality starts. He had three starts in the month of September. His first start, he got racked around pretty good. Last two starts, he came through with quality starts. So good job out of Fish, or excuse me, good job out of Shirley and Rich Bordy. And before I wrap up the pitching, I'd like everyone to just look closely at Neil Allen's numbers because Neil Allen was another very high performer in my 1985 season, and I'm going to make a point about this team's hitting that is going to go back to the numbers you see from Neil Allen. So remember those numbers as we go on in this video. Um, if you remember when I did my midseason report, I was 85 games into the season. I was at the All Star break. And I had 46 quality starts in 85 games. Second half of the season, post All Star break, consisted of 76 games. And this is going to be a very alarming number. In my last 76 games of the season, I only had 29 quality starts post All Star break. Look, I don't care how good your bullpen is. I don't care how good your hitting is. When you're playing games and over 60% of your games played, you're not getting a quality start. You're not going to win a lot of games. And that's one of the reasons it was very reflective in my record post All Star break. Post All Star break, again, keep in mind, I was 55 and 30 at the All Star break. Post All Star break, I go 38 and 38. But even that doesn't tell the full story. Um, the most games I was above 500 in my 1985 season. I never got to 30 games over 500. I got to 29 games over 500 two or three times. The last time I got to 29 games over 500, I was at the 111 game mark. So my record was 70 and 41. Last 50 games of the season, I go 23 and 27. It just a complete absolute meltdown, and a lot of it is due to the starting pitching just completely imploded on me. And again, like I said, I haven't hit on Ron Guidry yet, but I will get to Guidry after I'm finished talking about the hitting. Here we go with the final hitting stats on my 1985 season. First, I'll say I would definitely say my big high performer on the 1985 season, and it seems like there's always one every season I play. Um, for my 1985 season, it's got to be Willie Randolph. Now, like I said in my midseason report, Willie Randolph has a nice card for 1985. You know, it's a typical Willie Randolph card. He's always really good at getting on base, a lot of walks, nice column, singles, maybe a double here and there, maybe like a slight home run chance. But you could see he finished the year for me hitting 294. He drives in 60 runs on the season, scores 74. The reason why I think his runs scored might be a little bit low is because he was kind of moved around the lineup a lot. He would hit anywhere from first, second, seventh, eighth in the order. So he was kind of all over the place. 86 walks on the season, so he was always on base. And look at that. He finished the year with 38 doubles. I never saw a guy in Stratomatic beat up pitcher cards the more than the way Willie Randolph did in my 1985 season. Just an absolutely great year. You see the year that Ricky Henderson had. I'll talk a little bit more about Ricky after I get to Don Mattingly. But what I would like everyone to focus in on right now is if you look at Dave Winfield on line 6 and Don Baylor on line number 8, now Winfield didn't finish with his usual 100 RBI run scores like he did virtually every year of his real life career, right? But if you go back to my last stats update, which is at the 131 game mark, okay, and I'm going to put these numbers up right now. You're going to see that Dave Winfield and Don Baylor, along with I would say not so much Randolph because Randolph kind of cooled off a little bit in September. I would definitely say my big three performers offensively down the stretch was Ricky, Baylor, and Winfield. Dave Winfield at the 131 game mark, again, that was my last stats update. He was at 18 homers and 71 RBIs. So last 30 games of the year, he hits 10 homers and drives in 26 runs. He was absolutely on fire the last month of the season for me. Don Baylor finished the season off really well as well. Um, Baylor was at 17 homers, 54 RBIs, so he finishes September. Um, he hits 7 homers and drives in 17 runs for me the last 30 games of the season. Those two absolutely carried the middle of my order down the stretch. We see Ron Hassey. Ron Hassey is on line 9. Now, Ron Hassey's RBIs ballooned a little bit when I put him in the 3 hole against right-handed pitching. What I decided to do the last couple of weeks of the year, probably about the last 3 weeks or so, was I did Ricky Mattingly Hassey. So Hassey was able to get his RBIs up to 50 because early in the year when Hassey was kind of hitting like fifth or sixth, it would always seem he would hit like a solo home run. So he was having like a Dave Kingman start to the year where he had like 6 homers and 10 RBIs. Um, Mike Pallerulo's on line 10. Look, I would say I got pretty much everything I expected out of Mike Pallerulo. I mean, not much of an average. He did get 30 doubles on the season, finished with 24 homers, 68 ribbies. I could tell you the one thing which did hurt um, the offense a little bit is the ballpark effect home run for 1985 Yankee Stadium for a lefty bat. It's only a 1 to 13 on the D20. And I say it's only a 1 to 13 because I'm comparing that to 1980 when it was a 1 to 18. So it was basically an automatic home run if you rolled the ballpark effect home run. But honestly, Mattingly, Pallerulo, Pasqua, and also Ron Hassey, I would say they all probably had like a good handful of home runs taken away from them just from bad luck, not hitting on those ballpark effect home runs. You see, Dan Pasqua finished with nice power numbers in not even 200 at bats. He hits 20 home runs, drives in 43 for me. Bobby Meacham is on line 11. That's my starting shortstop. Look, at the All Star break, I was kind of happy with Bobby Meacham because he was hitting 220, right? But second half of the season, he couldn't buy a hit. And even like the last week of the season, he got like a little bit hot. He had a couple of games where he had uh, multiple hit games. But I remember as I was doing stats along the way, usually what I do is I'll play like 3 to 5 games at a time and I'll update the stats. May not necessarily always release them in a video, but I do keep up to date on the stats as much as I can so I don't fall that far behind. I can tell you at one point, Bobby Meacham was hitting like 190 in September. So he actually finished the year off really well to get his average all the way, and I say all the way up to 209. Now, let me talk about Don Mattingly. Mattingly, you could see he finishes the year with 33, 114. Post All Star break, Mattingly hits 10 homers and drives in 54 runs. Now, this is all I'm going to say about Don Mattingly, and I've already gone on the record about how I've said I don't like Don Mattingly's 1985 card at all. He doesn't have enough hits with multiple base advancement on it. It reads too much like a power card. Um, I would say um, if we just forget about Mattingly's numbers right now, because you could look at them and say 33 homers, 114 RBIs, what's the problem? Let's go back to Ricky Henderson's numbers on my season. 148 games played, 166 hits, just under 300 batting average, 91 stolen bases, 112 walks. What's missing from Ricky Henderson's final stats in my 1985 season? He only scores 110 runs. All right. That right then and there is pretty much all you need to know. He was left on base way, way too much. Um, I still believe if Mattingly's card read more like a guy, what a guy is doing with 145 RBIs on the season with two single one asterisk outside of his primary column. Someone's got to explain that to me. Um, so that's to me, that is what happened with the Yankee offense. There was a lot of, as they say, meat left on the bone at the end of the year because Ricky Henderson in my season should have easily have scored 130 runs minimum with the numbers that he put up. And just some final thoughts, some final takeaways. Number one, I think this team's biggest strength is also its biggest weakness in the sense that the team is too top heavy. If your star players don't perform as stars, you're going to have a hard time winning over long form play. And this is going to tie into my final point about the 1985 Yankees. Um, Specifically, I'm going to focus in on Ron Guidry and Don Mattingly. Now, keep in mind, at one point during my season, Ron Guidry was 17-2. And let's take one final look at his final stats for the 1985 season. Uh, I can't explain this. I still believe Ron Guidry has a top-notch ace card in Stratomatic, very deservingly so for 1985. Um, but he just couldn't win me a game. I mean, not only not win me a game, but he couldn't even get me any quality starts down the stretch. His last start of the year was a quality start and a win, but I mean, the second half of the season, Ron Guidry just imploded on me. And the fact that Don Mattingly, the 1985 American League MVP, hey, look, again, he finished with good numbers on the season. But again, I feel if he had a card that was more reflective of the actual season that he had in 1985, I think the 1985 Yankees would have done better in my 1985 season. So, remember when you're playing with this team, it's a very top heavy team. Very top heavy. If your stars are not stars, you're going to have a very hard time winning. Number two, if you're ever managing against the 1985 Yankees playing Stratomatic, it's a very easy team to manipulate. And this goes back to my season preview video when I did my team analysis on the 1985 Yankees. The depth in the lineup and throughout the roster just is not there. Okay. So, for example, there were lots of times where also managing for the other team, like I do, doing these solo playthroughs, there'd be lots of times where, let me paint out this scenario for you. Let's say the game is tied in the fifth or sixth inning, and you've got Hassey coming up, maybe a righty after Hassey, and then after that, maybe you got someone like Pasco or Paliarulo or somebody like that coming in. Remember what I said in my season preview video. Even if you don't like your lefty arm that you got coming out of the pen, use them against this team because that will force the 1985 Yankees to make a move. Either they will do nothing and let Ron Hassey hit against a lefty or Mike Paliarulo hit against a lefty, which looking at the cards right there, you don't want that. Or what you're going to have to do is pinch hit, and then later on in the game, guess what? You've basically used all your viable pinch hitters. I can't tell you how many times during the season I had to let Bobby Meacham hit for himself because I simply did not have anyone to come off the bench and pinch hit for him. So it's a very easy team to manipulate if you're playing against the 1985 Yankees. And a lot of that is because of the lack of depth, righty lefty mix, not only in the lineup, but on the roster as a whole. Another point that I want to make about the offense is this team is not a good come from behind team because they are not very good at putting people on base. And let me once again bring up the pitching stats and remember what I said before about Neil Allen. Now, before we take a look at these pitching stats, specifically Neil Allen, keep in mind Neil Allen was basically the guy who came out of the bullpen anytime, and this happened a lot, unfortunately. He was the guy who would basically come out of the pen anytime my starting pitcher was just getting hit around. There were games where Neil Allen came into the game in the second inning. And as we look at his numbers, you could see in 45 games, he pitched 85 innings. He finished with a 3.81 ERA. I could tell you he had a couple of outings in September where he got hit around pretty good. For a lot of my season, his ERA was actually under three. He pitched really well for the 1985 Yankees in my strat season. Notice his record. He's only 2-1. That goes to prove right there that this is not a good come from behind team. This team, when they fall behind, they have a hard time putting guys on base. Yes, I know they have power, right? But when you're down 5-1, 6-2 in a game, what you want is traffic. And unless it's like Ricky Henderson or Willie Randolph getting on base, this team struggles getting on base too much. So this team is definitely one of those when they fall behind, they tend to hide, you know. And my last point on the 1985 Yanks, and this kind of dawned on me as I was going through the second half of the season and my season was imploding all around me. It kind of dawned on me that I think this team may be better suited for short form play. I've spoken or chatted with some people in the community before who have said that they've played in tournaments that can run from anywhere from 18 to even up to 40 games, right? Think about something where maybe you don't have to use a fifth starter a lot, right? I think this team is better suited for short form play because the bullpen is so good. And they do have a lockdown ace in Ron Guidry where you can kind of say to yourself, okay, as long as I win my Guidry game, and everyone else who I run out there, like Joe Cowley, Phil Necro, or Ed Whitson, I've got guys like Bob Shirley and Rich Bordy who could eat a lot of innings out of the bullpen. I should throw Neil Allen in there as well. And I've got two great back end of the bullpen guys. And I could even save them on their usage by saying, okay, this Phil Necro game, if I have a closing opportunity at the end of the game, this game will go to Brian Fisher, and then the next game will be a Dave Righetti game. I think this team may be better suited for short form play because over long form play, like I just went through, um, this team just fell apart down the stretch. And again, it's because they just don't have enough pitching. I can't put it any simpler than that. So that's what I got for you on the 1985 Stratomatic New York Yankees. Again, I finished with a record of 93 and 68. So I finished 4 games behind the actual pace of the 1985 Yankees. Nonetheless, it was still a lot of fun going through the season and updating everyone on what was going on. And I thank you all for your participation, your viewership, and your comments, and even some of your words of like saying things like when I released that one video where I basically said my season's basically over. I got some people sending some condolences, So thank you for that. But at the end of the day, it's just Stratomatic. It's just fun, just try to keep this as entertaining as possible for everyone. Still had a good time going through the season, and I'm not done with the 1985 cards. I'm going to do something with the 1985 Mets, and no, I'm not playing a full season with the 1985 Mets, but I am going to do something with the 1985 Mets starting up here real soon. So once again, I want to thank you all for watching. It is greatly appreciated, and I'll talk to you all down the road.